Welcome to session 26 of the Simple course. Simple aspires to understand the mind through the bio, psycho, social, spiritual lens. Today we look at mental health through the spiritual lens. This session is not about persuading anyone of anything, but about considering the importance of spirituality to our well being. You watch three introductory videos entitled Eternal Life is Like What, Origins of Religion, and Not What You Think. Please go to session 26 on the website itsimple2021.com. Next are our usual reminders directed mostly at people doing the course in a group setting. Please take a few moments to read these on your own. To watch this week's mindfulness practice video entitled A Waterfall Meditation, please go to the website now. For people doing the YouTube course as part of a group, you can now pause for questions, comments, or feedback. This is what we will do today. We'll review Simple Manual Session 26 on spirituality, religion, and mental health. At midway point, we'll take a break. We'll also have time for discussion. Please rate your homework now. Today's overview. Today we'll discuss spirituality, religion, and mental health. The topics we'll cover include 1. Healing and growing to our fullest potential. 2. The origins of spirituality and religion. 3. The rise of science and decline of religion. 4. The neurology of spirituality. 5. What is spirituality? 6. The difference between spirituality and religion. 7. Spirituality and the stages of life. 8. Disconnection and loss of spirituality. 9. Trends in spirituality and religion. 10. Spirituality and health. 11. The varieties of religious experience. And 12. Jeffrey Kripal's integral spiritual story. Why are we talking about spirituality and religion in the Simple course? As I said in the introduction, Simple looks at mental health through a bio, psycho, social, spiritual lens, because each of these perspectives is important for understanding ourselves, growing, and improving our mental health. As we will see, the spiritual perspective on mental health is really important, but compared to the other perspectives, relatively neglected. Let's start with a quotation by William James. The animating essence of religion is the belief that there is an unseen order and that our supreme good lies in adjusting ourselves thereto. In the Simple course, we have discussed how trauma and attachment issues can lead to dissociation, giving rise to part selves. Some cultures believe that birth is a trauma that dissociates an individual's human consciousness from a universal mind, higher power, God, or causal realm. Those cultures believe that before birth, we were one with that realm, and that after birth, we become the dissociated individual consciousness we experience in this life. Soon after birth, we begin to forget that realm that we dissociated from and start to believe we are separate beings. We have previously explored how healing from dissociative trauma involves reconnecting or reintegrating the fragmented part selves. If we are indeed dissociated parts of universal consciousness, does healing from being fragmented individual minds involve realizing, experiencing, and living according to our one mind nature? What does that mean? How do we return to that oneness? This is what spirituality is about. In his quotation, by religion, James meant the spiritual, not the institutional aspects of religion. Today, we take a peek behind the veil that spirituality says separates us from that other mysterious realm and contemplate dimensions of ourselves that we have become disconnected from, soul and spirit. What is the meaning of life? In the simple course, we have asked many questions and attempted to answer a few of them. How can we understand our minds? What is personality? Why are we unhappy? How do we heal? Today, we ask the big question: what is the meaning of life? The Rosetta Stone is inscribed with a decree issued by King Ptolemy V of Egypt in 196 BC. The same decree is written in hieroglyphics, Demotic, and Greek. The Rosetta Stone was found by French officer Pierre-François Bouchard during the Napoleonic Egyptian campaign in 1799 and decoded in 1803 by Jean-François Champollion. The Rosetta Stone allowed Western linguists to understand Egyptian hieroglyphics whose meaning was previously unknown. Understanding what something means is critical to understanding what that something is. There are small m meaning questions, such as what do the Egyptian hieroglyphics mean, and capital M meaning questions. Capital M meaning questions include what is the meaning of life? What constitutes a meaningful life? Why are we here? What is the purpose of existence? What is this universe we live in? Is there something beyond everyday appearances? Who or what made all this? Why is there something rather than nothing? We previously discussed how love or connection with ourselves, others, a life purpose, and nature give us meaning and are essential to our physical and mental well-being. Today, we explore our relation to the universe, our place in the big picture, and the meaning of it all. Finding meaning in life. The capital M meaning questions have been asked by people as long as we've existed as a species. Religions and philosophy ask these questions. Philosophers, theologians, and religious and spiritual people try to answer them. Many answers have been offered. Each of the integral stages of development offers a different answer, which fall into two categories. One, some say true meaning can only be found in our connection to a bigger realm through the soul and spirit. The meaning of this material world can only be understood in terms of another world or realm that is veiled from us. They suggest that the experiences of mystics and spiritual people may be the Rosetta Stone we need to understand the other realm and the meaning of life. Two, others say there is no realm other than the material one in which we live. The only meaning in life is that which we choose to give it. Today, we consider mysticism, spirituality, and religion, as well as their connection to our mental health, as we explore what, if anything, this all means. In session 29, we consider a related question: what is all this? Today's session and session 29 are complementary. In session 29, we return to metaphysics and considered a related question: what is all this? Spirituality and religion are premised on the belief that the realms of the soul and spirit are as real or more real than the material realm. Materialist science, however, denies the existence of soul and spirit. Today, we explore mysticism, spirituality, and religion, and their impact on our well-being. In session 29, we explore how our modern materialist scientific worldview evolved, why it's an outdated map of the universe, and why philosophical idealism, which affirms soul and spirit, may be a better one. To quote poet Walt Whitman, "Re-examine all you've been told. Dismiss that which insults your soul." Different models describing human development agree that the later stages of development involve self-transcendence or becoming less concerned with oneself and more with others, the world, and the universe. Self-transcendence is one of the goals of spirituality. We have so far looked at how human growth is described by Erikson's psychosocial stages of development, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the integral stages of development. From an integral theory perspective, all human growth involves four different processes. 1. Cleaning up is the first step in healing and growth. It is learning to identify, deal with, and avoid our holes in the sidewalk. It is also known as dealing with the shadow or the dark side of our personality. 2. Growing up involves moving from more to less egocentric worldviews. 3. Showing up means participating in the world and connecting meaningfully with ourselves, others, a community, a meaningful occupation, and a meaningful worldview. It is about purpose or giving our gift to the world. And 4. Waking up means becoming more spiritual or moving from identifying with the weather to identifying with the sky. It is the realization that, as Pierre Teilhard de Chardin wrote, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. In the simple course, we have already discussed 1, cleaning up, 2, growing up, and 3, showing up. Today, we'll consider spirituality or waking up and the role it plays in health, healing, and growth. Has anyone attempted to explain the origins of spirituality and religion? Let's discuss the origins of spirituality and religion separately. Let's start with spirituality. Humans became a distinct species approximately 200,000 years ago. One of the things that distinguishes us from other species is that thanks to our superpower, the prefrontal cortex, we're capable of mental time travel. This means we can project ourselves into the past and the future. Some of the species, such as elephants, also have a well-developed prefrontal cortex. This also means, as much as we try to ignore the fact, we all know that someday we are all going to die. Birth and death are major life events. Knowing we are going to die and seeing our loved ones die makes us question if some part of us continues to exist after death. Philosophical idealists say yes, philosophical materialists say no. The two worlds, material and spiritual. Some of the earliest archaeological evidence of religious rituals involve death and burial. Much of this evidence comes from prehistorical burial sites and are typically found in deep caves, which were believed by our remote ancestors to be gates to the other, next underworld or realm. Prehistorically, and for much of recorded history, death was seen as a passage from this world to another invisible but very real realm. The evidence humans have always had for this other realm comes to us in mystical experiences, dreams, near death experiences, communications with the deceased, etc. This evidence is recorded in our art, mythology, religion, and popular culture, and is now also being explored using scientific methods. Is this life all there is, or is there another realm of existence that is hidden from us? Some of the earliest recorded thoughts on this are found in Greek mythology. To the Greeks, these were not just stories. This is how they believed the world really was. In mythology, the Greek underworld is a distinct realm, one of the three realms that makes up the cosmos, where an individual goes after death. The earliest idea of an afterlife in Greek myth is that at the moment of death, an individual's essence or psyche is separated from the corpse and transported to the underworld. The underworld itself, commonly referred to as Hades after its patron god, but also known by various other terms, is described as being located at the periphery of the earth, either associated with the outer limits of the ocean or beneath the earth. Spirituality became institutionalized in religions and religious practices. Some religions sought to establish a monopoly on spirituality. The origins of religion. Until about 12,000 years ago, Homo sapiens survived by hunting and gathering and lived in bands of up to 100 people. There was some division of labor around gender and age, but not a great deal of specialization. Their experiences of the material everyday realm and those of the otherworldly realm, accessed in dreams, rituals, visions, and extraordinary experiences, were inextricably interweaved. There were always some individuals who were better at dealing with the practical realm, and those who seemed to have more privileged access to the sacred realm. As social organization became more complex, members of the band and tribe began to specialize. The earliest specialization was the division between the 1. Hunters and warriors, who focused on the tribe's physical survival in the material world, and 2. The shamans, who were intermediaries with the invisible otherworldly realm. Because many illnesses appeared to be caused by invisible forces, shamans were also the earliest healers. Illnesses were often explained as punishment for sins, possession by evil spirits, or the will of the gods. As social organization became even more complex, there was further role specialization. An interdependence between the priests and ruler class arose, with both being the guardians of the society's myths, culture, rules, technology, and institutions. Throughout history, the priests and rulers, each attending to a different realm, have competed and cooperated for power. Today, the priests seem to be losing. How did that happen? Sci- To allow science to move beyond its 2,000-year-old Catholic Church sanctioned geocentric Ptolemaic and Aristotelian worldview, Galileo, one of the fathers of the scientific revolution, and a religiously devout Catholic, devised a compromise in which science would study only the material outer world, which proved amenable to mathematical modeling. Meanwhile, the more important realms of the mind, soul, and spirit, which he recognized were not amenable to mathematical analysis, were to remain the domains of the church and the theologians. This strategy of separating the mundane from the sacred worked well at first. Until the 19th century, most humans were absolutely convinced of the existence of these two separate but complementary realms. One, the visible, this worldly, material, mundane world, and two, the invisible, otherworldly, immaterial, sacred realm. By the 19th century, the accumulated successes of science with its underlying materialist metaphysics ushered in the modern and postmodern stages of development with their belief that all that exists is matter and that soul and spirit are outdated, unscientific, superstitious beliefs. With modernity, a dissociation arose between the mundane and sacred realms. Today, people at the traditional stage continue to believe that the sacred otherworldly realm is real and essential and want to preserve it. But materialism, the metaphysics of modernity, and postmodernity denies their existence. When it is wedded to a materialist metaphysics, science becomes dogmatic scientism, which refuses to even consider phenomena that don't fit with its materialist assumptions. Good science, however, is interested in all phenomena. The integral stage of development, in contrast to previous stages, embraces both science and spirituality, integrating the best from each of these traditions. I heard there was a God spot in the brain. Michael Ferguson, a neuroscientist, claimed in a paper in 2021 that spirituality and religiosity were rooted in brain function and associated with a brainstem region called the periaqueductal gray, an ancient brain structure. This region was referred to in popular literature as the God spot. This was a controversial claim, and the neurology of spirituality is complex. Other correlations between spirituality and brain function have been proposed. When we're in a spiritual state, the brain's parietal lobe, which helps us to have a sense of separate self, deactivates. As that happens, the boundaries between the self and the external world dissolve. At the same time, the brain's frontal lobe, which helps us to focus our attention and concentrate on things, shuts down. That is experienced as a loss of willful activity. We're no longer making something happen, but instead, that something is happening to us. When the left hemisphere of the brain goes offline, as in a type of stroke, people also have spiritual mystical experiences. Neuroscientist Jill Bolte Taylor wrote about her experience with a left hemisphere stroke in My Stroke of Insight. Like Jill Taylor Bolte, Scottish psychiatrist and author Ian McGilchrist looks at spirituality from the perspective of the differences in functioning between the brain's right and left hemispheres. He explores this idea in his book, The Master and His Emissary. Ian McGilchrist wrote The Master and His Emissary, a book whose title is based on a legend about a master and his emissary. The master has a balanced right and left brain hemisphere worldview and integrates the mundane and the sacred. The world is a meaningful whole. With the master as a wise, humble, but reclusive leader, his kingdom thrives. The master is overthrown by the emissary. The emissary has a left hemisphere, materialist modern stage worldview. He sees the world as constituted of separate parts that can be manipulated. The emissary is a logical positivist, a philosophical view that holds that scientific knowledge is the only kind of factual knowledge and that all metaphysical doctrines are to be rejected as meaningless. McGilchrist argues that both the right and left hemispheres' perspectives are important, linked parts of the human experience, but that with modernity they fell out and the left brain's materialist worldview became dominant. In the legend, under the rule of the emissary, the once thriving kingdom declined and collapsed. Without a balance between a right brain spiritual, sacred, and a left brain scientific, mundane perspectives, materialist modernity, with its rapacious, turbocharged capitalism economics, is in crisis. If we continue to be led by emissaries rather than by masters, our society is going to collapse. Although spirituality is right brained, the kind of non spiritual dogmatic religion which reduces spirituality's metaphors to literal truths, which tend to be incompatible with science, is left brained. The modern and postmodern stages are predominantly left hemisphere stories that are materialist, reductionistic, and lack the right hemisphere's perspective, which is essential to a sense of meaning and purpose. The integral stage of development adopts the best features of the traditional, modern, and postmodern stages. It integrates the best stories told by science with a spirituality based not on dogma, but on the mystical roots of the great religious traditions. I'm still not quite sure what spirituality is. Let's start with a quotation by Oliver Sacks. The whole impetus of life is to transcend and get beyond the separateness, insignificance, and transience of the ordinary human condition through association with something timeless and boundless. Spirituality is a mental state anyone can experience. Some people experience it frequently, others rarely or never. This may be in part genetic. Spirituality is a state in which we transcend our small s self and feel a loving connection or at one with something or someone outside of ourselves. Spirituality is about genuine connection, which is essential to our well being. Without spirituality, it's difficult to find meaning and purpose. Spiritual experiences are often connected with trauma. They are related to what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi described as flow. They are also often connected with sexuality. The spiritual state is considered an altered state of consciousness and can be promoted in a variety of ways, including rituals, rites of passage, pilgrimages or journeys, gratitude practices, fasting, using mind altering substances, connecting with nature, or through contemplation and meditation. These are known as self transcendent interventions or practices. These self transcendent practices have been shown to be more effective at treating mild to moderate depression than antidepressants. Intense spiritual experiences are called mystical experiences. Mystical experiences are noetic but ineffable. They typically present the experiencer with an alternative reality that is much more convincing than ordinary reality, but which can't be described in words. Spiritual experiences can also be negative. My favorite ways of fostering a spiritual state are silent retreats, walking in a forest, astronomy, and contemplation. Reading the writings of or listening to spiritually gifted people can also elicit the experience. Spirituality, like wise mind, to which it is related, has to be fostered. Some spiritual subjects for contemplation include 1. Asking why there is something rather than nothing. 2. How the elementary particles that existed right after the Big Bang formed ever more complex structures that eventually produced Bach's cello suite in G major. 3. How despite all the scientific advances, we still haven't the faintest idea of what elementary particles, which make up atoms, are. And our best guess is that they are more like a thought than a material thing. What's the difference between spirituality and religion? Spirituality is to religion as when I played street soccer with other kids in Portugal, is to England's Premier League or to FIFA. When I played soccer, it was a simple, playful, joyful, personal, and spontaneous experience with few rules and no financial incentives. Professional soccer is a big business, highly complex organization with many parts, including an administration, similar to the church's Vatican and diocese, the players, similar to ministers, and the fans, similar to the congregants. There are four main families of religion, or you can think of them as leagues, of which there are many different teams. The indigenous, Western, which includes Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, East Asian, which includes Taoism, and Shintoism, and South Asian, including Hinduism and Buddhism. Each of these families arose in a different geographical region and focused on the dominant concerns of their society. South Asian religions on psychology, East Asian on how to live together, and Western religions on our interaction with the material world. To quote Joseph Campbell, every religion is true one way or another. It is true when understood metaphorically, but when it gets stuck in its own metaphors, interpreting them as facts, then you are in trouble. And to quote Father Richard Rohr, we have made God a being rather than being itself. We are all manifestations of that being. At this point, defining some terms may be helpful. Religion, a particular system of faith and worship, the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. Spiritual, the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things, the feelings, thoughts, and experiences that arise in the search for the sacred. Mystical, inspiring a sense of spiritual mystery, awe, wonder, and fascination. Sacred, the divine, higher power or ultimate reality as defined by the person. Transcendental, relating to a spiritual or non-physical realm. Belief, trust or confidence in something in the physical realm. Faith, trust or confidence in something in the spiritual realm. A lack of resistance to what you hope is possible. Dogma, a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertible truth. Scientism, the approach which studies only those phenomena that are explainable by current theories and dismisses phenomena that are anomalous or cannot be explained by current theory. One can be religious without having significant spiritual experiences. One can be spiritual and not be religious. Mysticism and spirituality are closely related concepts. Mysticism is the belief that union with a deity or absolute may be attainable through contemplation or self-surrender. One can have a mystical experience, or if mysticism is central in their lives, be a mystic. A mystic is a person who seeks spiritual experience to raise and expand their awareness of self, the universe, reality, and the laws that govern all three. Mystical experiences are intense spiritual experiences which have combinations of 8 characteristics. 1, the experience of unity between the subject and the universe. 2, certainty of the knowledge obtained. 3, transcendence of time and space. 4, a feeling of sacredness. 5, paradoxality in terms of ordinary thinking. 6, ineffability. 7, transience. And 8, lasting positive changes in attitude and behavior. Is there any relation between spirituality and the priorities of the first and second halves of life? Yes. Priorities of the first half of life are material and about establishing yourself as an individual. The priorities of the second half of life are spiritual and about transcending the individuality that we've established in the first half of life. To review a slide we previously presented, pleasure, the mundane, and happiness, the sacred, and life stages. Pleasure is associated with the mundane and the first half of life. The pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain is called hedonism. Synonyms are amusement, gratification, enjoyment, thrill, buzz, diversion, ease, indulgence, kick, euphoria, recreation. Pleasure is dopamine-based. Dopamine is excitatory, damages if not balanced, downregulates, there's habituation, tolerance, and it's addictive. It involves immediate gratification, it's easily achieved, short term, secular, takes, and can be bought. Pleasure can be solitary and hacked with substances, and it's attached to Maslow's physiological and safety needs. It's associated with seeking, lust, fight, and individualism. It's associated with the first half of life, in which the task is to find yourself. Happiness is associated with the sacred and the second half of life. The pursuit of lasting joy that is attained through self-actualization is called eudaimonism. Synonyms are awe, wonder, bliss, contentment, joy, peace of mind, enchantment, hope, rejoicing, eudaimonia, optimism, meaning, and purpose. Happiness has to do with serotonin, which is inhibitory, slows down, is involved with contentment, and is not addictive. Dopamine inhibits serotonin, which means that seeking pleasure decreases happiness. Happiness is about delayed gratification. It's difficult to achieve long term. There's no habituation. It's the aim of Eastern societies and wisdom's traditions. It gives and cannot be bought. It requires connection to something or someone else, cannot be hacked with substances. It's attached to Maslow's love and belonging, esteem, and self actualization needs. It's associated with attachment, play, and the common good. And it's associated with the second half of life, in which the task is to transcend yourself and find your real self. Part of the explanation as to why our society is less spiritual and religious is that we're more stuck in the first half of life priorities, which are promoted by capitalism and consumerism. Two reasons why religion has declined are modernity and consumerist capitalism. According to a Pew Research poll, the percentage of North Americans reporting they are not religious increased from 12% in 2003 to 21% in 2017. This change was especially pronounced in millennials, the population cohort between 1981 and 1996. In 2007, 25% of millennials reported not being religious. By 2014, that number was up to 35%. In addition to modernity and consumeristic capitalism, the third reason for the decline of religion is our priorities. Over a lifetime, the average North American spends 27 years sleeping, over 8 years watching TV, almost 7 years using social media, 4 years eating and drinking, 2 years shopping, 2 years socializing, and 18 months doing housework. On a daily basis, the average North American spends almost 7.5 hours either watching TV or using mobile devices. These statistics were pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, the total amount of time spent watching TV or using mobile devices skyrocketed to over 13 hours per day. This is significant for our mental health because while participating in a religious community has been found to improve mental well-being through connection, screen time in its various forms worsens mental health, in large part because of the disconnection from community that accompanies it. A Kaiser Family Foundation study found that 22% of North American adults said they often or always felt lonely and isolated. Of those, 58% reported mental health issues, 55% physical health issues, while 33% said it affected their ability to work, and 50% said it affected their personal relationships. Spirituality and religion promote connection to the mystery of the universe. What happens when we lose that connection? This question brings us back to Johann Hari, who you might remember said in his book, Lost Connections, that part of why there is so much anxiety and depression in our society is that we became disconnected from ourselves, others, meaningful work, nature, and a meaningful story about the universe. The loss of spirituality and religion leads to disconnection, loneliness, and meaninglessness. Disconnection, isolation, loneliness, meaninglessness. There are internal or personality related and external or environmental related reasons why we're individually more unhappy. The culture we live in and its stories, values, institutions, etc., plays a role in our collective happiness. We've explored these when we discussed the Gini coefficient, social determinants of health, attachment, trauma, etc. If social changes such as the growing use of social media make us so unhappy, why doesn't someone do something about it? Modernity's economic system is capitalism, which comes in different forms. In its current free market, neoliberal, turbo form, capitalism churns people and nature into capital. Modernity's abandonment of spirituality cuts us off from a path to happiness through meaning and connection, and that is made worse by the increasing social and economic inequality. Socially corrosive algorithms. In place of happiness, the new media, especially social media, using profit driven algorithms, serves us up addictive, emotionally dysregulated outrage and self absorption from which we get a brief but addictive dopamine high. This, over the short term, distracts us from the real causes of our unhappiness, while over the long term, like all addictions, it makes us feel much worse since it takes us away from doing the things in life that are truly meaningful. The media also blames scapegoats rather than the real causes of our unhappiness. The boat is sinking, and rather than cooperating with each other, the passengers are fighting one another. Addictions compensate for the lack of happiness by replacing it with pleasure. What the low unemployment statistics hide is, compared to the 1960s, 4 times as many men ages 18 to 35 have given up on looking for work. On average, these men spend 2,000 hours a year engaged with screens. When we are addicted, we pay for the brief high with long term consequences to our health, involvement in the world, self esteem, etc. A society in which the pursuit of pleasure through addictions is rampant, like a crack house, is not an optimal environment for growth. So, neglecting religion and spirituality is bad for you. What are the health benefits of religion and spirituality? Benefits of spirituality and religion. An enormous amount of literature in the form of scholarly articles and academic books has been published describing the benefits of spirituality in promoting health and healing. This literature has reported on a wide range of benefits, including greater marital stability, less substance abuse, lower suicide rates, lower rates of anxiety and depression, a better metabolic profile, and less pain. Spirituality has also been reported to facilitate grieving of losses, correlates with positive self esteem and confidence, promote better relationships, provide a sense of meaning and purpose, enhance feelings of belonging, improve the capacity for problem solving, and increase hope. People who have regular spiritual practices live longer, heal faster from illness and surgery, and cope better with illnesses, pain, and life stressors. Religious and spiritual people have available to them several coping strategies, including seeking control to a partnership with God, asking for God's forgiveness and for help with forgiving others, finding strength and comfort from spiritual beliefs, and finding support from spiritual or religious communities. Spirituality is also important in trauma. Trauma is a profoundly negative experience that can cause disintegration and dissociation of the self. Spiritual and mystical experiences can be profoundly positive experiences that may promote integration and healing of the self. When the self is in danger, we can fall into the abyss of nothingness or rise into the embrace of capital S self. Self transcendent interventions, including wise mind remediation, seek to help people rise from the abyss of nothingness into the embrace of self transcendence. Before you can transcend the self, you have to find the self and connect with it, which is the goal of stage 1 of trauma therapy and the first 5 simple tools. Many stage 2 trauma approaches involve reconnection. Since spirituality is about genuine connection, many stage 2 trauma approaches are spiritual. Many kinds of psychotherapy are informed by and incorporate spiritual practices. These include dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction, Jungian therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, transpersonal psychotherapy, 12-step programs, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, simple, virtual reality overview effect therapy, spiritual direction, and many other stage 2 trauma therapies. Are there theories explaining why spirituality and religion help physical and mental health? Spirituality and religion are powerful resources that can help us to self soothe, self regulate, and bring us back into the window of tolerable emotions. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist that was at Auschwitz and became fascinated by how, despite the horrible conditions, some of the prisoners continued to find meaning in life. A sense of meaning was essential to survival. Those who lost it soon died. Frankl observed that sometimes external circumstances and our life situation are beyond our control. He maintained that the attitude we choose to face towards our life situation is within our control. The spiritual journey relates to our inner struggle to shape our attitude towards illness and even death itself. A relationship with God gives meaning to life. Coherence is about making sense of negative experiences. It has been shown in many studies to be one of the key principles underlying the impact of religion on health. Coherence views of adversity in life include God will never give you more than you can handle. This is the Buddha appearing before you, finding ways to free you from your own attachments, the very attachment that has made you suffer again and again. And the dialectical behavioral therapy statement that anytime you feel a difficult emotion or have a stressful event, it is a good chance to practice a skill and learn to use the skill more effectively. Does Western medicine incorporate spirituality into its approach to illness? Healthcare professionals addressing patients' spiritual needs and concerns is still a taboo. Western healthcare professionals receive very little education about spirituality and spiritual care. Most healthcare professionals feel that working with religious or spiritual issues is outside their area of expertise. Very few go on to refer patients with these concerns to a spiritual care provider. In a large USA poll of people receiving physical health care, 65% said they wished their healthcare provider would talk with them about their spiritual beliefs. In the same poll, only 10% of patients said that any healthcare professional had spoken with them about this subject. A survey of psychotherapy clients reported that a large majority had a desire to discuss religious or spiritual topics with their therapist and indicated that religion and spirituality were of central importance to their healing and growth. When there were such discussions, most clients reported feeling validated and acknowledged by the therapist's interventions. Does the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or DSM, have anything to say about spiritual problems? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders includes a diagnostic category called religious and spiritual problems. Spiritual distress refers to when an individual is unable to find sources of meaning, hope, peace, strength, or connection in life. Spiritual distress can occur when a person's beliefs and what is happening in their lives conflicts. This distress can have detrimental effects on physical and mental health. Common triggers for spiritual distress are trauma, facing a life-threatening or terminal illness, bereavement, and social isolation. Spiritual emergencies are crises during which the process of growth and change becomes chaotic and overwhelming. In spiritual emergencies, the self becomes disorganized and overwhelmed by an infusion of spiritual energies, which it is not yet able to integrate. A person may become fearful and confused and have difficulty coping with their daily life, jobs, and relationships. Spiritual emergencies can occur in the course of religious and spiritual experiences such as psychic openings, Kundalini awakenings, possession experiences, visionary experiences, near-death experiences, shamanic crisis, alien encounters. The term spiritual emergency was first used by Stan and Christina Groff at the founding of the Spiritual Emergency Network in 1978. There is an overlap between mystical experiences and psychosis that is not often appreciated in psychiatry. Mystical experiences and psychosis are both altered states of consciousness that are in many ways similar. In both, the person is no longer grounded in the rational mind self. The difference between them is that while in a mystical experience, the person swims or threads water in the ocean of the unconscious, collective unconscious, universal mind, in psychosis, the person drowns in it. Is it a psychosis or a mystical experience? In psychosis, the person experiences the subtle realm of which the imagination is a part, but loses contact with the realm of the gross or material. Mystics, on the other hand, discovered that the subtle and gross realms, or the worlds of matter and imagination, are two equally real aspects of the same thing. When you mentioned spiritual emergencies, you hinted there's different kinds of spiritual experiences. Can you say more about that? William James, whom we've mentioned before, wrote a book entitled The Varieties of Religious Experience, in which he describes the different types of spiritual experiences. Although the title of the book refers to religious experiences, he was really talking about spiritual experiences. William James was an American philosopher, historian, and the father of American psychology. In his book, The Varieties of Religious Experience, James aims to survey the types of religious experiences from a psychological perspective and to present the findings and implications for philosophy. James felt that religious experience was at the very heart of religion. Much of this book concentrates on descriptions and first-hand accounts of religious experiences. Skeptics view some of these as examples of psychological disorders, but James disagreed and placed such accounts as central to any understanding of religion. James was also the president of the British Society for Psychical Research, which was devoted to the study of the paranormal. He challenged his colleagues not to let a narrow mindset prevent an honest appraisal of paranormal phenomena. James and his colleagues investigated the paranormal using strict scientific methods. They concluded that 95% of claims were fraudulent, but 5%, after scrupulous controls to detect fraud, seemed legitimate. He wrote, "Our view of the world is truly shaped by what we decide to hear." James's life and work is very entertainingly captured in Deborah Bloom's book, Ghost Hunters. In his The Varieties of Religious Experience, James wrote, "Our normal waking consciousness, rational consciousness as we call it, is but one special type of consciousness. Whilst all about it, parted from it by the flimsiest of screens, there lie potential forms of consciousness entirely different. We may go through life without suspecting their existence, but applied the requisite stimulus, and at a touch, they are there in all their completeness. Definite types of mentality, which probably somewhere have their field of application and adaptation. No account of the universe in its totality can be final, which leaves these other forms of consciousness quite disregarded. How to regard them is the question." There are many anomalous cognitive phenomena that have been scientifically validated, yet continue to be dismissed by mainstream science because they cannot be explained by current materialist theories. These include dream telepathy, faith healing, Chinese energy medicine, Qigong, the healing power of prayer, ESP, out of body experiences, remote viewing, presentiment, and precognition. These are sometimes thought of as weak signals that are drowned out by the noise of ordinary life, but are nevertheless present, much like stars are present in the sky during the day, but drowned out by the light of the sun. The way to experience them is to reduce the interior and exterior noise. A 2020 survey asked over 1,100 US university professors about ESP. It revealed that 55% of natural scientists, 66% of social scientists, and 77% of arts, humanities, and education professors reported believing that ESP is entirely an established fact or a likely possibility. Interestingly, only 34% of psychology professors reported similar beliefs. A wide range of spiritual experiences have been described, and to those who are skeptical but open minded, reliable and convincing cases documented. These experiences include prophecies, revelations, divination, miracles, reincarnation, remembering past lives, magic, witchcraft, alien encounters, synchronicity, precognition, apparitions, psychic openings, kundalini awakenings, possession experiences, visionary experiences, and shamanic trances. A type of spiritual experience that has been much studied is near-death experiences. NDEs, or near-death experiences, are out-of-the-body experiences which occur by definition when a person comes close to death. In some cases, the person is deemed to be clinically dead, but is resuscitated. These experiences often include out-of-body experiences, contain reports of accurate information, and have striking similarities. The Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky had a near-death experience when he was subjected by the Tsar to a mock execution. Following this, he experienced post-traumatic growth and credits his creativity to this event. There is some evidence that the baptism rites of passage, as performed by, for example, John the Baptist on Jesus, was designed to induce a near-death experience by drowning and subsequent resuscitation. This practice was adopted in symbolic form by the Anabaptists and Baptists and was a prelude to being born again, which was meant to describe the changes in personality following a near-death experience. Following near death experiences, people often experience significant changes in their personality, including they lose their fear of death and have the strength and belief in life after death. They have a new sense of purpose or mission and heightened self esteem. They have more compassion and love for others and less concern with material gain, recognition, or status. They have a greater desire to serve others and an increased ability to express feelings. They have a greater appreciation and zest for life, an increased focus on the present, and a deeper religious faith or heightened spirituality, search for knowledge, and appreciation for nature. They experience paranormal phenomena with greater frequency, including other out of body experiences, apparitions, extrasensory perception, precognition, and spiritual, mystical, or transcendent experiences. They may experience heightened or unusual sensations, mental changes, increased energy, and decreased need for sleep. Some of the characteristics of near death experiences include ineffability, hearing the news, peace and quiet, the noise, the dark tunnel, out of body experiences, meeting others, a being of light, a life review, a border, coming back, telling others new view of death, and corroboration. Rupert Sheldrake writes, "When we die, we go on dreaming. We just can't wake up." Haven't psychedelics been used to explore spiritual experiences? In his book and Netflix series, How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan explores the history and science of psychedelics and the pioneering work of mental health professionals using them in the treatment of mental health conditions such as trauma spectrum disorders, addictions, and depression associated with terminal illnesses. He describes the two types of consciousness that have been explored in psychology. One, spotlight consciousness, which is very directly aimed at something. And two, lantern consciousness, which is associated with young children. Instead of fixing on one point, it illuminates everything and takes in everything as if it has never been seen before. Some say wisdom and spiritual richness is experiencing the joy and freshness of lantern consciousness after spending much of adult life in spotlight consciousness. Psychedelics, which mean mind manifesting and also known as entheogens or eliciting the God within, allow some people to re-experience lantern consciousness. In this type of consciousness, they are reminded of the world and its wonders in a way they may have forgotten. This is very similar to experiencing the world from Ian McGilchrist's Right Hemisphere. It leads to a sense of dissolution of the personal ego and is a reminder that beyond the ego, we are all part of universal consciousness. When a person deeply realizes this is their true nature, they transcend feelings such as fear and hopelessness. What's the connection between the supernatural and the spiritual? Some definitions might help explain connections between the supernatural and the spiritual. The supernormal or paranormal. These are terms coined by Frederick Myers, referring to an active nature that science cannot yet explain. The paranormal includes concepts such as prophecies, revelations, divination, miracles, reincarnation, karma, extracorporeal consciousness, remembering past lives, magic, witchcraft, alien encounters, and psi, which includes synchronicity, precognition, and apparition experiences. Parapsychology studies the alleged psychic paranormal phenomena, most often extrasensory perception, telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. The supernatural is a Christian category describing the interference of some entity from outside the natural world upon the natural world. also referred to as miracles, something science will never explain. The supernatural includes concepts such as deities, supernatural beings, angels, demons, ghosts, and spirits. The terms supernormal and paranormal and supernatural are often confused, particularly among skeptics who reject both with the same stroke. Most skeptics are at the modern or postmodern stage of development. There is an overlap between psychiatric conditions, religious or spiritual experiences, and anomalous or paranormal experiences. My favorite explanation of the connection between the supernatural and the spiritual is offered by Jeffrey Kripal. I like it because it ties so many things together: philosophical idealism, the supernatural, spirituality, religion, and, as we'll see in session 29, the multiplicity of self described by internal family systems. It is open, but also rigorously logical and rational. It is very much an integral perspective. The next two slides are a preview of session 29. Don't miss that one. Jeffrey Kripal's Integral Spirituality. Many people are leaving the traditional religions because these traditions fail to meaningfully engage with the issues we are concerned about. For many people, traditional religions don't seem relevant anymore. As traditional religions may be becoming more relevant, new spiritual stories are emerging, which are bringing meaning and purpose back into many people's lives because they make better sense of the world we live in. One such story is articulated by Jeffrey Kripal. Jeffrey Kripal is the J. Newton Razor Professor and Chair of the Department of Philosophy and Religious Thought at Rice University. As a child, he had an ascetic temperament. As a young man, he joined a Jesuit cloistered order. In his youth, he suffered from anorexia and credits his recovery from it to his psychoanalytical psychotherapy with a fellow monk, who is also a Freudian psychoanalyst. Later, while traveling in India, researching religion, he had a mystical experience which he wrote about in the book Kali's Child. He's the author of numerous other books, including The Supernatural with Whitley Strieber. Strieber is a best-selling fiction author and UFO abduction experiencer. Jeffrey Kripal's field of interest is comparative religion. One of his central ideas is that the paranormal, or spiritual phenomena, that are described in the foundational texts of the great religions, such as the Bible, Talmud, the Vedas, and Upanishads, continue to be experienced today by many people, albeit in slightly different forms because they are influenced by culture. These modern-day phenomena are legitimate areas for serious study. Kripal takes these present-day paranormal phenomena seriously, equating them with the mystical experiences that are the foundations of the great religious traditions. An idealist metaphysics, as we will see in session 29, allows for paranormal phenomena. The realm of pure consciousness, spirit, causal body, or God, is one with the realms of the psyche, subtle body, soul, collective unconscious, archetypes, and matter, gross body, material world. Kripal's view is that the boundaries between these three realms are not rigid, but permeable. Paranormal phenomena are at the boundaries of the subtle and gross bodies, or the physical body and soul, and have features of both. The boundaries between spirit, soul, and body are permeable and do not have rigid lines dividing them because they are different aspects of the one. Kripal points the way to a living, vibrant, and intellectually rigorous integral spirituality for the 21st century. On the PowerPoint presentation that you will find on the website, there is a review and practice component that covers the tools, techniques, and strategies that we have previously covered in the simple course. Looking over those slides will help you consolidate the material. Let's look at the homework for this session. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and see you next session.